Brother Washington, your mitochondrial DNA is quite common among the Mende and Temne people in Sierra Leone.
I said, you back there making it up anyway. Nobody believe you could take some spit and figure out a tribe? What are you, crazy?
There's nothing that confident for ethnicity. There's no diagnostic nucleotide. You can say this person is from Europe, this person's from Africa.
When you tell our people that they're actually aboriginal to the Americas, that this is their true homeland, the first thing they'll tell you is, go take a DNA test. Go take a DNA test and find out you come from Africa. Now let me tell you the problem with these DNA tests and these DNA companies. The people who own the companies will tell you face to face that our strategies are less than 0.1% accurate.
8 generations ago, both you and I had 256 great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents.
Wait, you're saying that if you go back 8 generations, we have 256 great-great-great-grandparents?
Yes, it doubles every generation. So you've got 2 parents, you have 4 grandparents, you have 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, and it adds up fast. It adds up so fast, in fact, that if you go back 20 generations, you've got over 1 million grandparents.
1,048,576 to be exact. And in each generation, DNA testing can provide information about only 2 of them.
We don't oversell. I mean, we just say, look, we provide a service. If you're interested in exploring a tiny bit of your DNA and trace its ancestry, we can do that.
When you say it's a tiny little amount,
It's less than 0.1%.
that's pretty teeny.
Yeah, but for people who know nothing about any of them, I think it's very important.
And out of that less than 0.1% accuracy is only comparing your haplogroup to other haplogroups that match your genetics. In other words, they are comparing living DNA to living DNA. This is only for entertainment purposes. They cannot find out where your ancestors truly come from because, get this, they don't have your ancestors' DNA on stock. They can only compare living DNA with living DNA. They are only finding the closest match on Earth to your genetics.
What they call a certificate of ancestry. Oh my God! It says that you share maternal genetic ancestry with people from the Mende tribe in Sierra Leone. Do you know anything about Sierra Leone or the Mende people? Nothing.
There's a place in Africa you can say that I'm from. A tribe. I am thrilled. It puts a name, a place, a location, a people. It opens up such possibilities.
But the problem is, Sierra Leone wasn't the only answer Vi got. A company called Relative Genetics found a match to a single person in the Wobi tribe in the Ivory Coast.
Different? Now, I got all excited about that. Was I different? Now, how could that happen?
Then a third company, Trace Genetics. Your particular sequence matches sequences reported among multiple Mendenga individuals in Senegal.
What's up with this?
And Family Tree DNA, the company that linked Vi with Marion in the first place, came up with a whole list of matches. This goes on and on. My goodness. So what do we know about Vi's ancestry? The DNA does indicate that she has distant relatives in the Mende tribe, but she also has relatives in all those other tribes. So no one can say for sure where Vi's maternal ancestor actually came from. When I handed Vi the certificate, she got extremely emotional about it. She wept, and it meant so very much.
People want to believe. People want to believe.
They want to believe they've gotten an answer.
And it's not fair of us to let them believe that we're giving them certain answers because scientifically, we just can't. Because scientifically, we just can't. Because scientifically, we just can't.
Hank Green science isn't really there yet for you to be giving them the name of a tribe.
I think for most companies, I would be concerned too.
But what about your own company?
We have
He
the
didn't
largest,
exclude you. He included you.
but we have the largest set of sequences from Africa. And so with that, we're able to provide some level of probability in terms of frequency.
But he would say that even though you have the largest database, it's still small on the scope of things.
As I said, I share those concerns.
About yourself.
For DNA.
And that's the rub. This business of genetic genealogy is fraught with limitations. For one thing, it can only provide information about a tiny fraction of our ancestry. Because we get half our DNA from our mothers and half from our fathers, almost all of our DNA gets shuffled and remixed every generation, making it impossible to trace what comes from whom. There are just 2 bits of DNA that remain pure. The Y chromosome, which passes directly from father to son, and something called mitochondrial DNA, which passes unchanged from mother to child.
A lot of people ignorantly take these DNA tests and think that factual information is going to come back. Always West African countries are going to show up as the results. And you know, Benin, Togo, Liberia, Nigeria, Ghana, etc. Always West African countries. Okay? Now, you must know why. It's not that the DNA is lying or anything. It's that the people who run these companies got you mind raped. They got you deceived. It's a deception. They got you thinking that your ancestors were taken from Africa and brought to America, when in actuality, it's actually quite the opposite. Your ancestors were taken from America and brought to Africa. That's why the haplogroups match up. Okay, that's what you got to understand. That's why the DNA match up. Like I said, they're comparing living DNA with living DNA. You must understand history. Black people, for some reason, don't like history. You must understand the history. Okay, the true history, not what they taught you in school, that bull crap. You must understand that the slave trade did not start in 1619 where slaves were taken from Africa. No, it started in 1492 by Christopher Columbus taking slaves from the Americas and bringing them to Europe. Okay, this was human cargo in a substitution for the gold and spices that they were supposed to find anyway. But Christopher Columbus didn't find any immediately, so he took human slaves, brought them to Spain and Portugal, and made a huge profit. Came back, brought more, came back and brought more. And after Christopher Columbus, more Spaniards, more conquistadors with their Moorish counterparts started going to North America, specifically the region around Terra Nova, you know, the Canada region and New England territory, and they started taking more slaves. Then they went from the Virginia territory to the Carolinas and even the Florida territories. They started taking more slaves, and from the period of 1492 to 1520, this is only 28 years, 5.5 million Native American Indians were shipped from America, brought to Spain, Portugal, North African countries as well. And you can read up in the book by Jack D. Forbes called Africans and Native Americans. You can see that Columbus, that when he took his slaves, he traded them not only to Spain and Portugal, but he traded them all across the Mediterranean coast, Libya, Morocco, because you know in Morocco, who was controlling Morocco? The Moors, like I said. And you must understand why the Moors played a big deal in the transatlantic slave trade, because you know, before Christopher Columbus, this was in 1491, the Battle at Granada officially ended Moorish rule in Spain. So you know, the Moors had to start working for white people now. So since the Moors started working for white people, they started capturing slaves from the Americas, and they started selling them from Europe into bringing them down into Africa. And now when you're reading in 1619, way after the fact, this is not the beginning of the slave trade. This is kind of like the middle. In 1619, those African slaves that came to America were just Native American slaves who reproduced over that 100 and something year period, you know, and they were just recycled. And only 5% of African slaves came to North America. That's what people don't understand, and that's what people don't realize. Only 5% of the so-called African victims of the transatlantic slave trade came to North America. That's what people fail to realize, okay? So the reason why African shows up on everybody's DNA results is simply because your DNA matches their DNA. Your haplogroup is the same haplogroup as them, not because they were taken from Africa and brought to your land. Your people were taken from your land and brought to Africa. That's why you gotta see the deception. That's why you gotta see it. There's already a lot of videos out about this topic, but this video is probably going to be the most brief video because I'm going to break it down so simple to where you have to, it'll be impossible for you not to understand this if you really pay attention and understand what's going on. So I'm going to let you know exactly what these DNA companies do. Very simple to understand. It's a two-step process. First thing they do is they extract your DNA, and from your DNA they get your Y chromosome and your mitochondrial DNA. And the information they get from your Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA is literally so small that they can only get the information from 40 people out of over 1 million people in the last 600 years, approximately 20 generations. And that decimal is 0.0003. That's the amount of information that they can get from your DNA. And they use this small amount of information and they put it in the database, and they find out where on the planet Earth you have the closest match to your DNA. But 99% of African Americans, so-called African Americans, will have results that show up for West African countries. Not because West Africans were taken from West Africa and brought to America, but vice versa. Our people were taken from here and brought to West Africa.